guys, my name is Maddie or Books with Maddie, and today I'm going to be showing you the books I'm reading this semester. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be showing you the books that I'm reading in college this semester. I thought this would be a nice, fun, short little video that I could share with you so that maybe if you're interested in any of the topics that I'm studying this semester, you could learn about them too by reading the books that I'm reading. I'm an English major and a Women and Gender Studies major, so if either of those topics interest you, you might want to stick around. I'm going to be telling you the 5 classes that I'm taking and then going through each syllabus of books that I'm reading for that class. I am working on some bigger projects, some bigger vlogs that will be coming hopefully soon. So I've been kind of like running out of ideas for what to do for these shorter videos that I can film just in one session to fill in the space before those vlogs are ready, if you know what I mean. So if you have any more ideas of like short little things that you want to see me go over or do, let me know down below and I will do those. But with that said, I will just get straight into the books that I'm reading this semester. Okay, I'm going to do these classes in no particular order. First, we are going to go over my comparative literature course. This is a 200 level course. So for this class, we're reading 5 books and I will show you those books now. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the course as well, because comparative literature is a pretty ambiguous name. So the focus of this course is basically looking at symbols in literature that come across through fashion or clothing or design or things like that. So things like, for example, I will use probably the most well-known book from this, which is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. In the book, Hester, the main character, has to wear a on her chest to signal her sin of adultery, and that symbol kind of changes and the meaning of it changes based on the different interpretations of it throughout the book, and so we look at things like that, different signs and what they signify, and things like that. Okay, so first, like I said, is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is the first one that we're reading, and we've already read it and talked about it a little bit. I'm not going to go over too much what it's about because I feel like pretty well-known classic, but basically, like I said, the main character has to wear an A on her chest because her husband is away and all of a sudden she's pregnant, so obviously she kind of committed adultery, and it just basically goes through her journey being kind of like this outcast. She is like basically shunned, and it goes through her story and her daughters and kind of what happens. I gave this 3 stars. I felt pretty average about it. Not the best classic I've ever read. It was pretty interesting. The beginning was very, very slow, and I think it's just like pretty average. Okay, so the next book that we're reading is a French title, Les Liaisons Dangereuses. That sounded like Sims talk. That sounded like when the Sims speak. Dangereuses. Okay, anyway, I know nothing about this. I was supposed to start it yesterday and I didn't. It's by Choderlo. It's by Choderlo de Loclos. I'm literally so sorry. I don't know how to, I'm trying my best. And it's translated by Douglas Parme. Parme? But it isn't English. It's a translation. I know nothing what it's about. Let's look at the back. Complex moral ambiguities of seduction and revenge make the title, one of the most scandalous and controversial novels in European literature. I did not know this. Prime movers, the Vicomte de Valmont and the Marquis de Merteuil, gifted, wealthy, and bored, form an unholy alliance and turn seduction into a game which they must win, and they play with such wit and style that it is impossible not to admire them until they discover that the game has mysterious rules that they cannot understand. In the ensuing vicious battle, there can be no victors, and the innocent will suffer with the guilty. Wow, that sounds crazy. I'm excited. Next, we have another little scandalous novel. This has a nipple on the front of it. I don't know if I can show that, so I'm just gonna I feel like I'm drawing more attention to the nipple. What if I just do this? Okay, I don't know what kind of guidelines there are for nips, but I'm gonna show you this side. This book is called Venus in Furs by Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. Why do they have such complicated names? Okay. Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. Incorrect pronunciation. There's the name, Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. I don't know anything about this one either, but this one's a short boy, so I like that. And also there's no synopsis on the back. So I really know nothing about this. I got nothing for you, sorry. But this is the next one we're reading. Okay, so the next one are a little bit more modern. First one is Kiss of the Spider Woman by Manuel Puig. Sorry if that is also incorrect. I believe this is a musical as well. I know nothing about this one either. It looks like it takes place in an Argentine prison. Two men share a cell. Both are gradually transformed by their growing friendship and by Melina's obsession with the fantasy and romance of the movies. So I'm not sure when exactly this takes place. It seems like it's a little bit more modern since there are movies involved. And I got these all used, that's why they look a little bit beat up. It looks like it came out in 1978. So maybe that's around when it takes place. And the last one that we're reading is like pretty exciting. Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger, which I've never read, but I have seen the movie and I love the movie. I honestly didn't realize there was a book. I'm gonna be super honest, didn't know there was a book. So that's the last one we're reading, which all of these have like seem to have a central theme around like clothing and like romance kind of. So that's, I guess, the focus of this class, so that makes sense. But yeah, this is the last one that we're reading for this class. Alright, moving swiftly on, we will go to Women in Global Religions, which is one of the most exciting and interesting classes I have ever taken in my entire life. This class focuses specifically on Islam, but it also takes some like notes from Christianity and Judaism, because all of those are like kind of intertwined because they're all monotheistic religions, which share similar roots, kind of. But yeah, so for this class, which possibly is my favorite class, it's so interesting. We are reading 2 textbook kind of things and then 2 novels. So for the textbook, they're not really textbooks because they don't read exactly like textbooks, but the first one is Islam: The Straight Path by John L. Esposito, and this focuses more on Islam and like the history of it. And then we are reading Women and Gender in Islam by Leila Ahmed, and this one focuses more on gender and women, obviously per the title. This one is so incredibly interesting, and it's so like, it's obviously not fiction, but it's so easy to read. Like, it's so fascinating that it doesn't read like a textbook at all. And this one I haven't read as much of, but it's definitely more historically heavy, so it's a little bit more difficult, but the writing in itself is like super easy. And yeah, I'm super excited for this class, and both of these I highly recommend if you're interested in learning more about Islam, or specifically women and gender in Islam. We are also reading 2 novels. The first one is called Girls of Riyadh. Riyadh? Sorry, don't know how to pronounce that word, but I think this is kind of a retelling. Wait, I think it says on the back. Oh, imagine Sex and the City if the city in question were Riyadh. That's kind of the premise. I don't know much about it. We haven't read it yet. But I'm really excited. I've heard this is like really like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like engaging because it's like a cool premise, like a storyline, but also it takes this like westernized premise, I guess the word is, of like Sex and the City, and then applies it to this Middle Eastern setting with different ways of living, like a completely different community, a completely different culture. So I'm really excited for this one. And the other one that we are reading is called Laughing All the Way to the Mosque, and this is by Zarqa Nawaz. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but this one is more of a memoir, I believe. I don't know much more about it than that, but I believe it just follows the author's kind of story. But I think it is about her life being a Muslim in a Western society. And that's what I think this is about. I actually just remembered that I'm taking a class where we're not reading any books. So there's another class that I'm taking, Philosophy of Love and Sex. We're not reading any books for that class. So I will only be going over 4 classes because that one there are no textbooks. It's all just like articles and stuff like that we are reading, no textbooks or anything. So next class that I'm taking is World Literature After 1945. This is a 300 level course, so the books for this are a little bit more heavy, a little bit more complicated. First, we already read this one. It is A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid, and it is a short little book. It's like 80-something pages. 81 pages, so it's really short, and it is written by the author who grew up in a small island called Antigua, and it is all about tourism and how tourism is just a modern day version of colonialism. And it talks about kind of the after effects of colonialism and what happens to these countries, these colonies who used to be colonized by the British Empire, and what happens when the British power, the colonial power leaves these countries, because it's not all good, because, you know, they are dependent on this economy that, I'm getting on a tangent, but post-colonialism doesn't mean all of the effects of colonialism leave a country. I mean, you still have the economic and educational foundation that colonialism set in, and now this country has to figure out how to do it without the mother country, and it's so interesting because we just learn these things and we learn them wrong. You know what I mean? Education needs to do better. Okay, this is the one I'm really struggling with, this book, and it is Omeros by Derek Walcott. This is a bit of a chunker. It's like 400 pages, I believe, and it is written in verse like this. Super hard still. Seems like it should be easier because there's less words on the page. Turns out it's harder. The problem is, and my professor admits that this is like a really hard book to read, is that it follows 3 narratives, but the author never denotes when the narrative changes. You have to figure out from the imagery, from the scenery, which perspective you're in. It's incredibly confusing, very, very hard to read. But it talks about kind of these same things with colonialism. One of the narratives is a soldier, an expatriate, so an ex-British soldier who moved to St. Lucia, which is the island that this takes place on, and he's kind of trying to justify himself being there. Like, he is this colonist, he represents colonialism, what is he doing living here? Kind of taking up space, you know what I mean? And then the other narratives kind of follow similar accounts of colonialism and tourism and things like that. So overall, interesting if you can understand what's going on. Okay, so after we finish Omeros, we are going to be reading Death and the King's Horseman, which is a little tiny boy. Like, after Omeros, this is going to be such a good break. It is 77 pages, but the 77th page is a glossary. And I believe it's a play. Yeah, it's a play by Wole Soyinka, and I don't know anything about it, to be completely honest. Let's see. A classic tale of tragic decisions in a traditional African culture based on events that took place in Oyo, an ancient Yoruba city of Nigeria in 1946. Wole Soyinka's powerful play concerns the intertwined lives of Ellison Oba, the king's chief horseman, his son Olunda, now studying medicine in England, and Simon Pilkings, the colonial district officer. The king has died, and Ellison is expected by law and custom to commit suicide and accompany his ruler to heaven. The stage is set for a dramatic climax when Pilkings learns of the ritual and decides to intervene, and Ellison's son arrives home. That sounds so interesting. So it seems like it follows a lot of the similar themes of colonialism and things like that. I believe the first 2 we read were, take place in the Caribbean. I believe we are now moving on to African novels, so books that will take place in Africa. So I'm really excited this is what we're reading next, and that sounds so interesting. The next book we have is Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. I'm sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly, but there is the spelling, and I don't know anything about this one either, and here's the synopsis. At 52, Professor David Lurie is divorced, filled with desire but lacking in passion. When an affair with a student leaves him jobless, shunned by friends and ridiculed by his ex-wife, he retreats to his daughter Lucy's small holding. David's visit becomes an extended stay as he attempts to find meaning in his one remaining relationship. Instead, an incident of unimaginable terror and violence forces father and daughter to confront their strained relationship and the equally complicated racial complexities of the new South Africa. So, yeah, that's what this one is about. It sounds like it's also following, racial complexities, so possibly colonialism still. If it's about South Africa, then probably. So, yeah, I'm excited for this one as well. That one actually sounds really interesting. I believe we are now moving to the Middle East with Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. I'm sorry again, I'm so bad at pronouncing names. This was also used, so there's lots of notes in it already, but this is like a comic, a graphic novel, but I believe it's also a memoir of the author's life. It says, a memoir of growing up as a girl in revolutionary Iran. So I'm really excited for this. I'm not a huge fan of graphic novels or comics, but I read Fun Home last semester, which was a graphic novel, and I reasonably enjoyed that, so I'm excited to see how I will enjoy this one. And lastly, we are reading Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, which kind of comments on racial issues in America. Things like that. I don't know much about it other than that. I own a couple of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's books. I've only read Dear Idiuela, is that what it's called? Dear Idiuela or Feminist Manifesto. Excuse me, I'm talking. Dear Idiuela or Feminist Manifesto and 15 Suggestions. I'm a little concerned about reading her book because she has some complicated opinions about transgender individuals, which I don't know too much about. I know she made transphobic comments in the past. I don't know if she's reconciled them or if she continues to stand by them. I really have no idea, but I know that her narrative as a Black woman is important, but I'm really not willing to ignore the transphobic comments. So I do have to look more into that. If you know anything about that, let me know. But yeah, this is the second time I've had to read one of her books for a class. It's like slightly disheartening, but yeah, let me know if you know anything about those comments and what ended up happening with those. I will look into those as well. But yeah, a little disappointed in that because her narrative as a Black woman is very important, but those comments are the worst. So that is the last book for World Literature after 1945. We are on the last class that I'm taking. Technically, I'm TAing, so it counts as credits for me, but for me it's an independent study on intersectional leadership, but the actual class is Sociology of Gender. So the books that we are reading for Sociology of Gender are, I need to grab them. First one is For the Love of Men by Liz Plank, which is a new vision for mindful masculinity. It's all about toxic masculinity and things like that. It is so interesting. It is so readable. Like, it is so incredibly accessible. I highly, highly recommend this for literally everybody. It's so good. I'm not done with it yet. I'm about halfway through it, but I highly recommend this book. Is so incredibly interesting. And honestly, need I say more? The next one is Sensuous Knowledge by Mina Salami, which was one of my favorite books that I read last year. I read it for my feminist theory class, and then I'm taking this TA class with the same professor, and she chose this again for Sociology of Gender. It is one of the most phenomenal books I have ever read. If you ever have the opportunity to read it, please do. Even if you don't, make yourself read it because it is one of the most important books that I've ever read. It is an incredible narrative on Black feminism and a worldwide intersectional perspective on feminism. So important, highly recommend. It was one of my top 10 books of last year. Please read. And the last one that we're reading is In the Dark Room by Susan Faludi. I know pretty much nothing about this book, to be completely honest. I'm gonna read this synopsis and then summarize it because there's a long synopsis. Okay, quick summary of this synopsis. Susan Faludi learns that I believe this is like a memoir type of situation, but it is a narrative on gender. So Susan Faludi finds out that her 76-year-old father has undergone sex reassignment surgery, and it's basically her coming to grips with that, her kind of understanding gender and gender identity and things like that. I've heard this one is a bit more dense, a little bit harder to get through than the first two that I talked about. I haven't started this one yet. We're reading it later in the semester, but just from what my professor has told me, this one is a little bit more dense, but it's overall sounds really, really interesting, and I'm really excited to get to it. But if you're looking for something a little bit more accessible, I would highly recommend these two. Also, I mean, I haven't read this one yet, so I can't not recommend it or highly recommend it or anything, but that is what this one is about, and I will let you know my thoughts on it once I get to it. But yeah, that is the last class that I'm taking because that one does not have any books. So those are the classes that I'm taking this semester. Those are the books that I'm reading for them. Let me know if you've read any of these before, or let me know if you guys are interested in any of these topics and other books maybe that you read that relate to these topics, or if you're planning on picking up any of these books, let me know. I'm super interested to see what you guys think of that. That is the end of this video. You reached the end. Congratulations. Thank you for watching. This video is a bit of a mess. It's always a mess. Wait, you should have known by now. This isn't surprising. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know all the things that I previously said down in the comments below. Without further ado, that's the end. How do I end my videos? It's been a little bit of time. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great week. And I hope you have a great life. And I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.